So Meghan Markle's jam, preserves, spread, sauce, whatever you want to call it, her fruit in a jar has hit the market. It has made it to consumers, finally, after many years and a turbulent launch that had to be reworked and redone multiple times. And let us not forget, is full of thievery of other people's ideas. The products themselves taken and lifted from places like Flamingo Estate and King Charles's Highgrove line of honeys and preserves. The logo jacked from a small town ship in Spain. And the name stolen from multiple people, but especially this guy in New York City that makes cool jumpsuits and clothing, a small clothing brand. Seeing the jam here, or spread, technically called raspberry spread, the As Ever name is really bothering me. I get that she's really proud of her spindly cursive, but this just doesn't look good. As many of you pointed out, the E being lowercase just looks so insane on a label. It should be both capitalized because that is how brands and names and proper nouns work. This does look super B-team to have the lowercase e here. Once we see it in its true form out to customers, this doesn't look very good. It looks unprofessional as a label perspective. The logo, I think, doesn't fully make sense for the products that she's selling, but at least it's better than the crazy American Riviera Orchard Montecito mess. At least it's not that. But knowing that it was taken from the crest of a town, makes it feel kind of icky. So let's see what the reviews have to say. This should be fun. Meghan's spread too thin. A withering take on Meghan's latest money-making scheme and why we were shocked by what we discovered. The raspberry spread has finally arrived after over a year of anticipation and an entire rebrand. So is the infamous berry concoction really all that she's said it's cracked up to be? Spoiler, it might be time for her to concentrate on a new formula. The precious jars sold out in minutes when they were released Wednesday, but Female managed to get our hands on the $14 raspberry spread in keepsake packaging, no less, for the first public review, which I am very glad they did, because I would never. Am I curious how it tastes? Absolutely not. It does not look appetizing. And I'm not a big jam, preserve, fruit sauce type of person. I prefer to just eat fruit whole the way it is. Jams and sauces and preserves with fruit have always tasted a little overly sweet to me. I don't even like fruit juice that much. But when I have had some sort of fruit in a jar, occasionally, a bite or two on an English muffin or some toast or something, there's times that I have had it and times that I have had some that's better and some that's worse. And I agree with her when she says a lot of times it's far too sweet. I don't like things that are too sweet. But looking at the consistency here of more of a sauce, I can say it's not something that I would want to put on toast and whatnot, or really use much at all. It looks a little too sticky to be a sauce for things like ice cream or other types of desserts, like in puddings or things like that. It looks a little too sticky for that. And it also has the seeds and texture to it. So looking at the consistency of this being very loose, more like a sauce, but also having the fruit chunks and seeds in it, then it really wouldn't make a good sauce for something like ice cream or pudding desserts or things that are more like you would want to add a sauce to it, even some sort of baked good that you might want to put a sauce under or on top of or on the side to. It doesn't look like it would really work for that because it looks very sticky, kind of gloopy. And with those chunks in it, then it feels like it would be kind of confusing to your palate texturally. That is this going for sauce, in which case it should be strained and much more smooth, compote, or where there should be more chunks, or preserve, where there should be a thicker consistency. It feels a little confusing. But let's take a look at what they said about it. The company claims that the raspberry fruit spread is inspired by her recipe that she crafted in her home kitchen. She previously explained in an episode of her show that her preserves can't technically be called jam because jam is equal parts sugar and fruit. Not quite. She says, I don't think you can taste the fruit that way. Not necessarily, but per Food and Wine, jam is regulated by the FDA and it must come from a single fruit containing at least 45% fruit and 55% sugar. So not 50-50, not equal parts, but almost equal parts. And what Meghan is selling under as eVER is not called jam or a preserve, it's a spread with ingredients of raspberries, organic pure cane sugar, organic lemon juice concentrate, and fruit pectin, a natural stabilizer. Upon opening, we found a handwritten note from Meghan herself right on top, printed on a thick postcard with her as eVER branding stamped in gold foil. When you flip the card around, there's a message printed in Meghan's signature calligraphy, rather cursive, that reads, "Enjoy, Meghan." Bossy. A bit ominous there, Megs, they say. That's funny. And true, it does read a little, intense. Not quite as personal as I think she thought it would be. After reading the note, we continued wading through the packaging to find the jam, which was padded in packing peanuts and wrapped in creamy beige paper before we finally got to the piece de resistance. Because we'd splurged for the keepsake packaging, as there was no other choice during the initial launch, it meant that the 7.6-ounce jar came in a tan cylinder-shaped package embossed with the logo. The over-the-top packaging, which could be hard to reuse due to its jam-shaped hole, reminded us more of a luxury candle than a condiment we'd throw in the fridge after opening. Once we'd finally reached the spread, what immediately struck us about the container was its minuscule size. It's small, containing just 215 grams of spread for $14, or in the future, when they allow you to order it without the keepsake packaging, it would be $9. It feels quite small in your hand, especially when we compared it to that of Bon Maman Reserves, which contains 370 grams in a 13-ounce jar for around $6. So, for the eco-warriors of Meghan and Harry, this is a lot of excessive packaging. Packing peanuts, really bad for the environment. Why not just use some recyclable paper to bunch around it? I order from eVER all the time, and they were one of the first companies to initiate more eco-friendly sort of manufacturing. They were very early in that, at least within the beauty space. I guess maybe some other industries might have been up there as well, but eVER definitely in the beauty space pioneered a more sustainable process of manufacturing and packaging and things like that. And they use cardboard boxes like everybody else, and they pack the products in just paper so that you can easily recycle it or reuse it. Why didn't Meghan use just paper to pad the box? Packing peanuts are so hazardous for the environment. That's a really bad choice and not a great look for her. Also, the unnecessary little postcard demanding you enjoy it, also unnecessary and feels very wannabe royal, you know what I mean? Like things that come from the royal family. When some member of the royal family sends out a letter or a card to someone, it's a big deal and it's very meticulously made. It's beautiful and the stationery is very special. So I feel like this is just Meghan wanting to be able to do that herself, just like how she made that weird note to the podcaster. Maybe we'll talk about that in a separate video. It feels very wannabe, like she's trying to emulate the royal family and she's failing at it. And this unnecessary postcard is just going to be wasted paper. It's not great marketing because she's just like, enjoy, Meghan. This is what you must do with this. You must tell us it's good. It's not necessary. And if you are an eco-warrior, then you have to walk the walk. If you're going to tell other people what to do to protect the environment, then you need to be doing it yourself, for goodness sakes. And your brand shouldn't be putting things with packaging things and sending things out that have unnecessary packaging and paper of any kind, or plastic, or peanuts. They're notoriously terrible to deal with and notoriously burdensome on the environment. And same goes for the unnecessary box to keep it in. Who does she think she is that anybody wants this unnecessary keepsake box with a horrible logo, terrible spindly cursive on it, that annoyingly has a lowercase e forever. It's bothering me more and more now that I'm seeing how it actually is looking in real life on the packaging. It's just a terrible idea. Let's get to the jam though. Once we'd finally reached the spread, immediately upon opening the jar, we were taken aback by its texture. It's very liquid and quite thin, a bit loose, if you will. If we hadn't known better, we'd have thought it melted during its expedited journey to us. That being said, it is described by the brand as including a hint of lemon and a fluid texture. And I'm not sure you would want a fluid texture and call it spread. Spread, you think of things like peanut butter, maybe Nutella, various butters like honey butters or apple butters or things like that. You might think of a chutney. You might think of a jam or a jelly as some sort of spread. You want to be able to spread it, not drip and dribble it and drizzle. For a spread, it should come up on a knife and stay on the butter knife. You know what I'm trying to say? Like if something's called spread, from a marketing perspective, branding perspective, we are going to think and imagine scooping it out on a butter knife and spreading it on bread. That's the first thing that's going to come to our minds because we've all been making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches our whole lives or whatever. So a spread, even cream cheese spread. It stays on the knife and you spread it round. You would not think you require a spoon, and it's liquid and could be poured when you think of spread. So this is a problem. Even though they do disclose that it will be a fluid texture, it's still problematic because from a marketing perspective, a lot of people don't read the description. They're just like, bam, I'm buying it. It's still a problem because they're going to be like, this is not a spread. This is not spreadable. Anyway, as they rightly point out, typically a jar of jam is thicker and sticks together, whereas when we stuck our spoon in to Meghan's raspberry spread, its consistency dripped off the silverware like a sauce, and it was unappealing. Predictable, expected, but unfortunate still, I guess, from the point of view of like, people are spending money on this and getting it, and Meghan this is her chance to make her spreads good, and they are an unappealing texture and an experience from the get-go. I don't envision, maybe it's because I'm not a jam person, like I said, people just spooning this. Who's going around eating spoonfuls of jam or fruit sauce? That's what I want to know. What's happening? Who are these people? If you do that, let me know. But Meghan seems to be wanting to make this a thing, just like the way she wanted to make boat necks and cookie cutter bra outlines and giant man pants a thing. She wants to make these things a thing. She wants to make spooning liquid jam into your mouth a thing. It's not a healthy choice, so please don't do it. And nobody does that. So I'm really confused. Anyway, as for the taste, it's extremely sweet, and we mean really sweet. It's reminiscent of a sugary raspberry dessert sauce rather than a jam or spread that's meant to be eaten on a piece of toast. The flavor was also surprisingly strong, which meant we could taste the sour lemon in the spread, which Meghan had promised in the product's description. That's good. Sometimes a bit of acid and sourness can really help with something that's a little too sweet or the tang of fruit. They pair well together, but it feeling so saucy and so liquidy and looking all gloopy and sticky like this at the same time is going to create a weird problem for us because we don't know what to expect from it. That's why marketing and stuff and labels and what you're calling it matters, because you're painting a picture in the consumer's mind with the words you use on the label and how you describe a product and what they can expect. And if it's different from what they expect, they're not going to like it right off the bat, because it's not what they were expecting. And again, they're saying it's too sweet. And I'm very adverse to things that taste too sweet, especially something like this that delivers no nutritional value anyway. Then it's not sounding great. Let's put it that way. After trying it by the spoonful, which left us grimacing from the sweetness, we spread some on a toasted piece of sourdough. Lovely choice. Which is where things began to take a turn for the worse. You would think that would help it. Oh no. It was difficult to eat the spread with the toast as it was too thin and dribbled everywhere and made a mess. If you've been with my channel for a while, you know one of my phobias is sticky stuff. I can't handle sticky things at all. It freaks me out. So something like this that's going to not stay on this knife, so it's not a spread. What else are you meant to put it on? You're going to put it on something like toast, and it's going to get everywhere and get everything and everyone sticky. That's not going to end up in my kitchen ever. Absolutely not. I would never. It sounds like absolute nightmare fuel. Our once nicely toasted piece of bread became a sopping wet disaster after just a few minutes. So that means it's so liquid and so thin that it soaked through the barrier of butter to make the bread soggy, the toast soggy. Fascinating, in a bad way. The spread is so sweet that it masked the flavors from the sourdough, which is disappointing. That's not going to create a balanced product to put on anything if it's going to overpower it with just a sugar taste, with only the sugar from the fruit and tang from the lemon coming through. Now, they give credit here and say it may be okay on vanilla ice cream or a piece of pie or a big stack of pancakes, but I would argue something like vanilla ice cream that's already quite sweet. Piece of pie, incredibly sweet and jam-packed, hopefully you would think, of fruit flavor. A big stack of pancakes, you're probably going to also have some accompaniments there, maybe maple syrup, maybe some whipped cream, maybe some other fresh fruit. You don't want to also have some overpowering liquid raspberry sauce. But it might, they say, work in those capacities. I don't have much faith in that. But on its own or eaten as one would expect to be able to enjoy jam or a spread, which would be spread on bread or toast, the product crumbled, or rather dripped, under the pressure. It was even worse when we compared it to store-brand raspberry jelly and a jar of Bon Maman, I hope I pronounced that right, which both had completely different texture and taste than Meghan's spread. Both of the jams were much thicker, so thick in fact you could stick a spoon in both of them and it would stay upright, or, as we would expect, scoop it onto a bread knife, a butter knife, and be able to spread it onto the toast without it dripping everywhere. They were also a tad less sweet than the raspberry spread and didn't leave our toast soggy. If Meghan really wants to continue down the jam route, it appears she may need to come up with a different recipe. The taste is nearly there, but it's the consistency that takes away from the product and makes it an absolute failure. Out of 5 stars, we gave it a 2. I would, based on this, not having tasted it, say maybe just a 1 star. 1 star for having a strong raspberry and lemon flavor. I guess maybe 2 would be fair because it is true to what they said on the website of it being a fluid texture and matching the flavor profiles. But you would be taking away stars for it being too sweet, not spreadable, the excessive packaging, ridiculous packaging, small amount for a high price, not a good deal, not very economical, and for it just not being very good in general. I think it would be a tough sell between 1 to 2 stars based on what they said in this view here. Now, I want to circle back to something at the beginning that they pointed out, that it sold out within a few hours. Allegedly, many of her friends and Meghan herself, family, which would be like just Doria and Harry, purchased multiple jars immediately, which helped it to sell out, but also it was a micro batch. There wasn't a very large amount for sale, but time will tell. Over the next couple of weeks, as people get their packages and are posting reviews and things like that, we will see just how many people actually bought it who were not just famous friends of Meghan's and asked to buy it. So we shall see. I'm eager to see more reviews, to see what more people think, and to see just how many actual real consumers got their hands on this product. Anytime a celebrity has a launch like this, that's a little bit smaller scale, and by that I mean there's a difference between a publisher putting out a book or doing a collaboration with, for example, a cosmetics company or a clothing line, where they're going to be selling this stuff on their websites with or without you, and you're just kind of pairing up with them for it in a collaborative way, or a book where they're like, a publisher is in charge of selling it. I'm talking more like these smaller situations here, smaller scale stuff where a celebrity like comes up with something themselves. Sometimes like their own skincare brand, their own makeup brand, their own raspberry spread in liquid form. Usually it is a really small batch the first time, a smaller launch the first time they do something like this because they're testing the waters. And especially with things that are like food or cosmetic products that have an expiry date, you don't want to make an order and manufacture some huge amount and not be able to move it. And then you have a huge amount of waste. So usually they scale it down, and initially the launch is the smallest order that they could possibly have placed to the manufacturers to be made. So usually it's a very small scale the first time around. So I don't expect there to be a ton of people, a ton of real consumers having got their hands on it. But the fewer real human beings, just members of the general public who actually got to order this jam, or any of the products for that matter, the more obvious it will be that Meghan and her very small group of supporters just went in there and bought as many as they possibly could immediately. And it would be more evident the lack of confidence they have in the products as well, in that they would have had fewer made in the first order, fewer available, and trying to buy it out themselves so that less gets out there to the consumers in the event that it is reviewed poorly. It doesn't look good. But leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me for today's jam-packed video. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye! Jams and sauces and preserves with fruit have always tasted a little overly sweet to me. Like, I don't even like fruit juice that much at all. Like, I'll have a sip here and there, but it has been a struggle if ever I'm dehydrated, which has been many a time in the past, to get me to drink something that has sweetness to it. I prefer water and my almond coconut milk lattes. They discontinued my coconut milk, so now I have to switch to almond milk with coconut milk. It's not as good. But anyway,